Pontificators. So hi, I guess I'm one of the 4 Pontificators. I'm Art T. Bear. We have Chester Busby III. How you doing, Chester?
I'm doing great, everybody. I wish I knew how to share this out because I'd do it if I could.
Share it out. You mean like on
Yeah.
Twitter and all that?
I guess I'd have to do it manually. So YouTube, you just press a button.
Yeah, you have to go old school, man. I don't know what that is anymore. I don't know what new school and old school. I'm confused most of the time. Also, we have somebody who's not so confused, which is Todd Mulrooney. How are you, Todd?
I'm doing really good, Art. Really good, thanks.
Yeah, Todd came up with a cool graphic for the Pontificators, and I will show that off after we're done here. I'm going to put it in the post or in the, what is it called, the thumbnail? I'll put it in the thumbnail.
Yeah.
And I believe you've been posting on Twitter too, so you guys can see it there. It's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, they've probably seen it.
Yeah, and then we have the great Zach Bradley. How are you, Zach?
I'm doing great. It's been a very, very moist day here in Houston.
Moist.
Yeah, moist. Because we've had literally rain for the past 4 days straight, and half the city's flooded, and it knocked out my air conditioning. So right now I'm like boiling inside my house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Flooding
The
sucks.
thing is, and the thing is, you can't open windows here to let in the cool air. Well, I mean, you can, but like just the amount of bugs, you're just like opening a gateway to
Yes.
like.
You
bug
guys,
hell.
you guys don't have screens. You guys don't have screens where you live.
No, we have screens, but it doesn't keep them out.
You guys got to double the screen up.
Yeah.
Well, that's sad to hear. But when you said moist, that was definitely an understatement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Build the arcs, man. Zach in the backyard manning a crew to build an ark.
With giant fly swatters. At that.
Man, I just got a like one of those old prehistoric movies where they had like the giant bugs coming at people. I just got an image of Zach fighting off like giant with a giant fly swatter.
Kirk Douglas in action, showing off that chest hair. He shaved, didn't he?
Yeah. Zach jumps at one and catches it, and it kind of flies off with him a little bit, and he starts pulling on the wings until he finally, pulls the wing off, and then it crashes. Yeah.
I've seen that flick. It's a good one.
That's a good one, Zach.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Zach, you got a book, right? How's it doing?
It's picking up pace as the countdown has begun. 4 more days, and so I'm excited. I'm extremely excited to get working on it more so. Like, I'm really excited for the campaign to end so I can go full steam working on it, because advertising is extremely exhausting, and I just want to have fun. I want to get to the fun part, which is the making the book. So I'm extremely excited about that.
Yeah, so that's the world of Golma. So if you guys haven't checked it out after this live stream, go check it out. It's a fantastic book by Zach Bradley. So what were you going to say, Todd?
He brings up a good point that I talked about earlier today on when I went live, and that is, when you're the creator, the artist, we're wearing a bunch of hats. I'm gonna finish my book as far as inks go, right? And if I end up coloring it, I'll just color it as the campaign's on, because coloring's kind of cathartic. And I was practicing coloring earlier and stuff, so I don't think I can wear both hats or all those hats in campaign. Yeah. So I got to give Zach a lot of credit, because you want to be on as many things as you can, and you want to post as many. I know how. Trust me, I know how long it takes just when we drop a video on Anycom TV for me to post everywhere it goes. If it's under 10 minutes, I can get it on Instagram. I can get it on IGTV, and usually the whole thing, I know it sounds like it shouldn't take this long, but the whole thing from nuts to bolts takes me about an hour and a half to make all those posts and make it all.
Yeah, you're pretty slow. Yeah. Pretty slow.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what you think of me, Buster. Forever to do anything.
Another one that calls me Buster. That's all right. I'll take it. But that is a fair point both of them are making, though. One of the things the indie revival is certainly lacking is marketers. We really are. We need more of those kind of people, the advertisement people, the PR people who can sell things. We're lacking that a lot, actually.
Yes, Chester, I'm sorry. I apologize for the Buster line. I
Oh, no,
combined
no, no. Gary Shipman calls me Buster too. It's all right.
Yeah.
Buster.
It makes sense.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
call you Buster next time too.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd. Thank you. That's okay.
Busting out. So what we have as far as a topic, and if you guys don't know the Pontificators, what we do is we take a topic and then we talk it to death for about an hour or so.
Pontificate it. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're all deep thinkers here, so this is all good fun. And feel free to chime in the chat. So this is all interactive, and we should have a lot of fun with this one. So it's old. We're like kind of like the difference between old comics and modern comics. Like, what are the significant differences between them? Old school comics, there's definitely a different aesthetic to it. But like, what was it like? Maybe making those comics. How was it like as a fan reading those comics? And then we can go from old to basically new. What are your new experiences reading comics? So anybody in the chat, if you have your questions, just fire them away at us. And do you guys want to get into the meat of this now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
All right. So I don't know who to start with. Who wants to start? Raise your hand.
I can tell you what I remember about old comics being different than new comics is how Stan Lee was sort of grandiose and had a lot of gravitas. Well, comic books and covers, and then the first opening page had that gravitas, right?
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And that is kind of a lacking, there was a lot of lettering going on covers and stuff. And you know what? That was not that you want to cover images. Obviously, we know all about that, or covering images with dialogue and that kind of thing. But there was a way to do it on covers where you didn't cover anything that was necessary or took away from anything. And I think I'd like to see that come back. How about you?
Oh, I loved, like, even when there would be dialogue, like word balloons on the cover, like, I will kill you. And then the other guy's like, you can try.
Right.
Or I'd like to see you try. Or whatever the heck the little, come on was. Yeah. And then the little blurb at the end, two titans, whatever, going at it, enough said, or, like those type of things. Is that what you're talking about, Todd?
Yeah, absolutely. They were, they were always bigger than life. And of course, obviously back then, heroes fought super villains for super stakes. Mm-hmm. And the gravitas was right there on the cover. And I really liked it,
Well, that's cool. Yeah. So how do you feel, Chester?
Oh, well, me, I mean, the idea of comparing modern to the ancient is always interesting to me, being a historian. What there is a good thing to be said about that. I mean, we get into like production values and we get into artistic qualities and stuff like that. The modern ones are going to have some advantages, I think. But as far as selling comics, having fun with comics, involving children in comics, nothing compares to the past. Nothing. They're not even bothering trying to sell it these days to the kids. And that's a sad thing, I think. But I loved it when I'd open up the book and I had some sketch of Stan Lee sitting there saying, Excelsior, reader, and going into what's going to happen today or what's coming up, or just the little, even the advertisements were more fun. You could get a book from some dude who would turn you from a wimp getting beat up on the beach into a muscle man. I remember it.
But 3D glasses.
Yeah, you could, dude. It was awesome. These days, instead, you get Lilo and Stitch or something. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah, you get corporate ads. Do you guys remember? I think it was a double page where in the Marvel book where you could actually see the Marvel offices and they had caricatures of all the different editors and Marvel bullpen and everything like that. God, it was fun. It was fun.
It was, man.
God, in the 60s, I even remember there would be little extras, like there'd be a schematic of the Bat Cave, and you go, oh man, that's how it works. Or you'd see like a schematic of his utility belts and stuff like that. Those are all cool things that they would do for kids. It was mainly for kids.
It was. It was.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because Todd has made this comment a few times, and he's right. They are trying to appeal to adults. I'd say they fail more often than they succeed, but they're trying to. But what they're not doing is appealing to children at all. And
Yeah.
that's a problem, right?
Yeah, I agree. So Zach, how do you feel? What are your early recalls of comics?
Well, no, like you all said, it's just early comics had this very simplified formula of doing a very specific thing that in a very simple way where people just jump into it. It didn't really matter what issue it was. You could just jump into the story because they would, like have like a Stanley or have like Alfred or somebody that would be like kind of cool, catch you up real quick in a fun way, and then you could just go, and it was kind of very much like jumping into television shows, and they don't really make them this way anymore,
like one and dones, right? One and dones.
Yeah, exactly. And I do miss that a lot because it feels like and I'm even doing this unfortunately, which is like there's like this ongoing series, and if you don't have one part, then you kind of miss out on a whole bunch of things and whatnot. But what I'm trying to do is I thought about releasing it in chapters for my book, but the thing is I want you to have a collector's item. I want it to be a book. I want you to have the whole thing, and I want you to be able to sit down and read it at your leisure. You can binge it if you want, but I think my biggest thing, the change is since we've developed, better tools and methods. I wouldn't say better, but just different tools and methods of making art and stuff more efficient, especially with the digital age and stuff like that. That I'm actually baffled that the quality is, and especially DC and Marvel, is actually going down.
Oh, really? I haven't bought a new comic in a while. So what do you mean by it's going down?
Like last night, remember, Chester, you were yesterday, you were looking at the Harleys, and they look terrible. And this is DC.
Wait a minute.
And all those DC covers. And this
the production value. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, they're picking on Amanda Connor.
Well, no, it's not just. I'm just saying, like the art is looking not as good. Like you see something like Kyle Ritter, and what he made, and that looks spectacular. It looks amazing, and it just is like the standard, like that. I'm even like, oh man, I gotta step up. It makes me feel that way, and that's what I think it should do. Is it should be like something that progresses, and and I look at like my old, just today, I looked at some old Batman comics I have, and I was like, man, these are wonderful. They're dynamic. They've got this real sort of momentum to them, especially with the paneling and stuff like that. And then, I go online and I look at like anything new, and it's so it feels like I'm watching really bad cartoons.
Yeah, and Todd, that Amanda Connor cover, amongst other ones, but that Amanda cover would never have passed Stan's desk, and you know it.
I don't know about that. She got
no way, dude.
A year, a couple times.
Yeah, well, maybe she's done better in the past, but that was an absolute crap cover, dude.
You guys have.
And we've seen a lot of them, and they're doing it on purpose. Is the thing that ticks me off. And Marvel is worse than DC, because we're talking about DC with Amanda Connor. But they're doing it intentionally because they have those A or #1 covers that they're crap because they want the collectors to get the better covers later. And what it's doing is it's killing comic book stores because in order to have that, they have to order a certain number to have cover 2 or cover 3 or cover 4, and they're killing them. And they're doing it intentionally. They're putting crap on their covers intentionally, Todd. And you're going to defend that, dude? I'm shocked.
No, I'm not defending. I'm not defending that aspect of what they do. But Amanda Connor is actually well liked as far as But
she might be the nicest lady in the world. That doesn't matter.
No. I mean, her covers. But I get you.
I think there's a place for certain artists, and I think there are mainstream superhero artists, and then there are artists that can do good indie or quieter things, more mundane things. And I think she's pretty good. She does very mundane, though. I think it kind of hits a certain clientele. But
Right.
when she's working on like a Superman book or a Batman book or something that's more like mainstream superhero, I think she doesn't quite come across as well as she does on something that's, you know, a little bit more personal, like maybe, you know, her Pro. Remember she did that indie book called The Pro. I thought that was pretty good. I thought it fit her style.
Yeah, there are things that he's right. There are things that fit her style better than other things. But she's a talented, capable artist. She does some really good interiors and tells a good story. But she's just a very simplistic artist, and you're right. It does fit certain things better than others.
Well,
Okay.
I would agree 100% that indie comics have far less stress upon them, or scrutiny would be the better word, than say DC or Marvel. That's true.
Yeah, I think you mean as far as fandom is concerned, right?
Well, as far as expectations, I mean, if you pick up an indie comic book, you're not expecting it to be the top tier of art. You're expecting it to be stylistic, cool, and have a good story if it's going to keep your attention. Now, when you get people like we were talking to Billy Tucci, Todd and I a week ago, and he's a guy that came out in the mid '90s, an indie guy coming out of nowhere and just dropping this phenomenal art. So it can be good. But I'm not going to scrutinize an indie art as tightly as I am DC and Marvel, for goodness sake, right?
Right. You expect more. It's like if you
Yeah.
watch a Disney film versus like an indie film, you know, you expect a certain level. Yeah. So definitely your expectations should be there, I think. And if you're not, if those expectations aren't being met, then yeah, that isn't good. But they've always had good artists and bad artists.
Yeah, but he also didn't like Ivan Reyes cover too that I thought was really good, and there was another
Dude, the
cover
leg was
by
way out of
Emmanuel.
proportion. The perspective was way off.
No,
She was
the one where
flying
they put the
sideways
cover in the
across the
hand.
board. What are you talking about?
You show him that cover, and I bet you he doesn't judge it that harshly because
Okay,
it's Emmanuel Lupacina.
You've become less in my eyes, Todd. You've become
No,
less.
I'm sorry.
there's a saxophonist judging art. This is what we got.
I really like
the Reyes one. I was nowhere near as harsh on. I was mainly on that one because, like, dude, come on, that Harley Quinn cover was bad, dude. But the Reyes cover was off too. But the thing is, dude, they do it intentionally because that cover, that art that Reyes did, maybe Amanda as well. It probably was like a early submission or something like that, and they put it on there badly. They want it to be bad because they don't want you to buy that first cover, dude. They do it intentionally, Todd.
I don't think so.
They most certainly do, dude.
I
It's not a conspiracy theory. My tinfoil hat is on, however.
I guess if you knew who the other covers, the variant covers were by, you could probably say that they might have had some that were painted by, say, Ben Oliver or somebody else, or there are guys that do. But again, Ben Oliver does a really beautiful cover, but it's always a static image.
Well, I mean, I'm being hyperbolic for effect, obviously,
Right.
but this is a trend that I have been noticing, though. I mean, to be serious for a moment,
I'm sure they got Oliver Copiel to do a couple of those books that are coming out to do a cover because his covers are fantastic.
Yeah, he's really good. I really love that guy's work. Hey, so getting back on topic, what are the biggest differences? Like, if we had to find one of the biggest differences between older comics and newer comics, what would that be? Zach, you haven't talked in a while.
The biggest difference is I don't know because it's. Well, I mean, there's someone put a really good point, and I agree with James. James Hayes put a really good point. Is it feels like the dialogue and the story writing in newer comics is far less intricate or thought out. There used to be a lot more dialogue, especially in older. Like if you look at Watchmen, like each page was almost like absorbing the art on top of the dialogue, on top of the narration that Alan Moore did. Yeah, it's very wordy, but the thing is that it told like this wonderful, awesome, in-depth story, and a lot of comics nowadays aren't like that at all. In fact, you know, a lot of comics they'll have like 5-word bubbles, and each one only has like 6 words in each one. That's just like, "Hey, are you okay? I think I'm okay. I'm okay. Are you okay?" And it's just like kind of this weird little back and forth, and that's the whole page. That's like literally the whole page, and there's nothing that's happened, and then you get like one, like at the very beginning you get one giant square that like literally fills you in on everything, and then you get like nothing else, and it's a very strange sort of shift, and I don't know if I like that trend in new comics.
So are you saying that they're underwritten? Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like and the way that they approach it too is like it's very awkward dialogue. I don't know if you read like any of the new 52 or stuff like that. Like it feels like the dialogue is really janky and wonky. Like who talks like that? You know what I mean?
Shaggy and Scooby.
I can taste your privilege.
Yeah.
Well, comics have always been heightened. Comics have always, I mean, for the sake of dramatics and things, they've always been heightened. So they always say pretty ridiculous things because it's very direct, and it used to be written for kids. So I don't know. I don't think comics have ever been overly sophisticated. I think there have been comic books that have been that, but I'd say by and large, they're pretty much, the dialogue is fairly direct.
You want to know what I think the biggest difference is? I think you'll agree with this. Is obviously the digital coloring has really changed the game. Now, I made a post not too long ago, and it said something. I'll paraphrase what it said. Walt Simonson made me believe, made me like Thor, but Oliver Copiel made me believe in Thor. And then John Buscema made me love Conan, but Mahood Assar made me believe in Conan. And that's because of the environmental looks to the colors and how intricate that it looks. The art is so much different. So I do believe the coloring has made the comics more immersive.
And it's a difference of style because one of the more contemporary ways of doing comics is being more realistic. So these guys are taking more from nature, and they're not exaggerating things the way comics once were. So to compare like Walter to Olivier, it's uniquely different. The takes are so monumentally different. And so a lot of the new contemporary artists are way more realistic with lighting, with staging. But what also is happening is you can't get away with as much dynamics with a realistic figure as you can an exaggerated figure. So like Kirby could get away with like crazy dynamics because his rules didn't follow any reality rules. But once you start drawing more like Olivier or even Ivan Reis and those guys, it's a little bit more realistic. Like even Jim Lee's his work is way more cartoony and exaggerated than a lot of the more contemporary guys. So I think it equates to maybe less fun. So if you have less exaggeration, then you're creating more of a mundane scenario, for your story. So if your characters are more realistic, you can only go so far with them because then it gets out of the realm of believability because of the world that you've created. But if you're like Walter Simonson, then everything's on the table. You can go anywhere with that style. With a realistic style, it forces you to stay within confines, I guess.
With certain, because you're the more realistic you are, the more physics have to come into play.
Yeah, because if it doesn't, it's more relatable. Because if it's not right, people will know it's not right. But when Walter Simonson does something or Jack Kirby, they exaggerate things that are not anatomically correct. You know what I mean? These things aren't, sometimes even the perspective will be fudged for a dramatic effect. But if you try to do some of those things in a more realistic drawing style, it doesn't work at all. Yeah. So I think that might be a fundamental difference, where there was more of a variety of style maybe in the past, and more exaggerated comic book type style than, the comic book storytelling of today. Would you guys agree?
Well, I think the biggest difference between it then and now is fun. I think
Oh,
you
that's
said it.
true.
It's fun. It's not fun anymore,
Well,
and that's a real problem.
Yeah, that's exactly where, if you exaggerate the figure and you exaggerate the storytelling, then it's way more fun than if you do it in a realistic setting.
That's right. Yeah, and I think Zach's comments were very poignant as well, because, the old storytelling in general, I've seen some good ones. Not like everything today is bad. It's not true, but in the past, you'd see a lot more story in your 20-some pages than you get today. A lot more story. I've seen more story in a single book than I see in a 4-part mini run today. And that's and there's and it's not just dialogue, it's how they're presenting the characters, because this pinup point that Nick is making about the cover, although I don't agree with Jim Lee's Action Comics with 1000, but they're doing a lot of pinup and posing in the panels instead of telling stories in the panels. And I agree with Todd that the inking has and the coloring has certainly improved, and production values way up because of it. But if you cut the fun out, you're hurting yourself.
But
And this is something that's been going on for a while, dude.
I've turned you on to some really good storytellers,
You
right?
have, and they were mainly French. Thank you.
No, no.
Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.
Great storyteller. Steve Epton and Velvet. Some really good storytelling in there. So the artist that's like a Butch Geist, like, amazing storyteller. So the artists that still have sort of a realistic style, but also can tell a good story, they're there.
Yeah.
What would you say about Lee Week's art?
Oh, I think it's amazing looking, but it's also, he is very exaggerated. He is not like Olivier or some of the others. That's, his work is pretty exaggerated. So it's kind of like a Jim Lee, where it's a little bit more realistic, but there's a lot of exaggeration and cartooning going on there as well.
Right.
So I think he's probably a good example of how far you should take realism versus, making exception to making things bigger or more exaggerated in a, mainstream superhero comic book way.
Right.
So he's probably one of the better examples. I like Lee's work a lot.
Yeah, me too.
But
Absolutely.
Pablo Romero art says, I think because back in the day, they needed to tell a complete story in a single issue. And I remember, because I was doing comics when this trend was changing, and it went from one and dones. And so what they would do is they would tell these epic tales, right? So you would start the issue, and then you would finish it within 22 pages. And it could involve a whole armada of an alien invasion, you know what I mean? But it would be wrapped up in 22 pages. And so I think that's the difference. And the newer comics, I remember working with Fabian on the X books and then later Cable. And this is nothing against Fabian, but he was writing 3, 4, 5 books a month or whatever. And so what he would do is, if he found something like, let's say, taser technology, this is how old, these books are, then you would see like tasers enter into every one of the books he would write for that month. And then what they would do is they would create a scenario, like one single plot line that they would expand on for a series of issues, where in old comic books, they would have one main plot line and maybe 2 dangling plot lines, like secondary plot lines that they would resolve over time. But you'd always still get a one and done with a dangling plot line, right? But but the more current comics, and like I said, I'm not trying to single out Fabian because he's a good writer and he's a good friend, but what they would do is instead of multiple plot lines, there would usually be just one plot line, and it would go on for maybe 3 or 4 issues. You know what I mean? Without like a lot of secondary plot lines and other things going on. So I believe that the older books were more exciting because there was, like Zach said, there was more going on. Quite frankly, there was just a lot more going on in those comics than there is now. And I think contemporary writers have figured out that they don't have to come up with a brand new idea every month. If they can stretch it out into 6 or 8 issues, then it's one idea that they get up, that they come up with, they pitch it to the comic book company, DC or Marvel, and then they sign off on it. And then they don't have to come up with a new idea every month. Like old comic books, they came up with new, unique stories every month. Look at Spider-Man the first year. Stan Lee and Ditko were introducing brand new villains every issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Totally unheard of now. Like nobody does that now. It's almost like everybody's holding back in a way, and it makes it easier for the writers because they can expand on these things. And I believe that, you went from like the Fabians then to like a Michael Bendis, which I also worked with. And then Michael Bendis took that same idea that I'm talking about, and he went even beyond that. Like when we were working on Ultimate Spider-Man, I think it took like 4 issues or 5 issues to get Peter Parker in the Spider-Man suit. That would not have flown in like the 60s. That wouldn't have not worked, in the past.
No, that'd have been one page.
Right. So they have to move things a lot faster because they have to keep an audience interested. And so then there was this long form of storytelling that Bendis and like Mark Miller and stuff like that kind of helped build. And so it became a longer form, but it also became in a way more realistic, because then instead of like making a point at the end of 22 pages, which sometimes feels artificial and feels forced, they could kind of expand upon it over a series of issues, which seems more organic and more realistic. So I think it's just a different approach. So when one is done well, it works. And when the other is done well, it works. But I think as far as probably as a corporate mandate or the way comic books should be made, how do you guys feel? Do you think it should go back to like short form, more one and dones, or like long form, more realistic, contemporary storytelling?
I definitely want to see more of the past, but that's me personally. I do have a theory, though. When you guys are ready, I certainly give it to you.
Well, I just want people to care again. I want the creators, the professionals in these positions of power in the big two and whatnot to be really passionate about what they're doing to a level where they would go above and beyond because they want to, because they love it. And it feels like everything's just getting treated like a job. And that's why you're seeing so many wonderful, cool ideas coming from independents, because literally they're doing it because they love it. And it's not just a job.
I agree. That's well said. That's really good.
So that's my what I want to see.
So it doesn't matter as long as it's passionate, as long as it's from the heart, whether it's long form or one and dones.
Yeah. There's room for both. There's obviously room. Because great stories, some of the better stories that we remember were told over more than one issue. Obviously, Dark Knight Returns, and another person that you named a couple guys that sort of invented that, but another guy who did that was Jeff Loeb, told longer stories, and and he worked with Tim Sale on a bunch of things that were, I don't know how long Halloween was. How long wasn't that? 12 issues.
Yeah, I'm not talking about miniseries and like like Watchmen kind of Elseworld stuff. I'm talking about more like monthly comics.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? What was fun? Because it was kind of monthly. There was always, how there's always sort of a thread or a plot that weaves through. But you could enjoy, funny you bring this up because you worked on this book, but prior to the the version that you worked on, Super Sons, was like that. It had some smaller contained stories.
It did. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I love that book. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the writer now. You guys help me. That's horrible.
It's certainly not Bendis. It's definitely not Bendis.
No, it wasn't.
No,
Ben.
it's Pete Tomasi. I think Pete Tomasi is the gem at DC Comics. I think he writes great mainstream superhero stuff. He understands the medium, and he does like ongoing plot lines, but there also is conclusion within an issue or two.
Right.
So keep going and going and going and going. And yeah, I think Super Sons was one of the exceptions. And you know what? Out of all the books I've done in the past 10 years, other than Black and White, and now Chrono Mechanics, I have gotten the most feedback, like fan feedback on Super Sons than I have in the past 10 years. And
It's a great book.
Yeah, it was a great book. I couldn't believe that they canceled the first run of it.
I know.
Because Bendis wanted to play in the Superman, family world.
There was the only teen book that I had read in years. I'd stayed, like, I must have stopped reading Teen Titans probably in the early 90s. So Super Sons, I'm a huge fan of Jorge Jimenez. The artwork in there was incredible, and the synergy between him and the colorist was awesome. So yeah, that was one of my favorites, and it was readable. And I'm gonna, it didn't take me much to, like, somebody said, hey, go check this out. Super Sons is really good. And you know what? That first run actually won some awards, and it was weird that they canceled it.
Yeah. Well, since we have Art T. Bear in front of us, why don't we ask him the question directly? Because he was sitting there working on Super Sons when they kept threatening us for months that Bendis was coming. So maybe Art can give us some insight into what was going on at DC at that time with all their threats of Bendis.
Well, I kind of knew from me personally, I wasn't that like, oh, I can't wait for Bendis to come over and take take the reins at DC Comics, because I think when Bendis first started, he was onto something. It felt original and it felt fresh. But like a lot of the big storylines and things he was doing at Marvel, I think, gosh, I can't remember the book now, but it was one of these big events, the ones with the what are the changeling characters?
The
Skrulls?
Yeah, the God, it wasn't an Avengers book.
Secret Wars.
Secret Wars, yes. And every issue felt like he was just rehashing the issue before it.
Yep.
I was like, am I taking crazy pills? This is like, I bought 3 issues, and each one of those issues rhythmically felt exactly the same as the one prior. And I was like, if it wasn't for Francis Lionel Yu's artwork on this, I wouldn't have even bought 3 books. And I stopped after the 3rd because I was like, this isn't going anywhere. So I think he just kind of started doing that long form, storytelling, but to the nth degree, to the point where it almost felt like a crutch, like he was being lazy. And so, after that, I was like, I don't think he has much in him. And then he started doing more agenda type, stories and characters. And then I was like, oh no, he's going to come over to DC Comics. And then my worst, the thing that bugged me the most is that I do think Pete Tomasi he's a gem, and he should be treated as such over at DC, not just get work, but that guy should be put on, like the superstar platform, and he should be, promoted that way. But then, Bendis comes over and there's a double-page ad that says Bendis is coming, to Superman and all these things. And then, my editor calls me up and says Super Son is canceled. But he says, don't worry, we're going to do a mini-series. I'm like, this was a great selling book. You can't just cancel a book and then reschedule it with a mini series and expect everybody to be happy with that. Like,
Very stupid.
They're gonna be feel betrayed, man.
So, Art, who is the person? Who are the people over at DC that were jumping up and down, all excited with Bendis coming? Who was it that were pushing it, dude?
Oh, you know what? I'm not that, inside DC. I'm sorry, I'm kind of eating some food here. So I don't really know, but I would think it was more like agenda driven, from probably Jim Lee, Dan DiDio, Bob Harris, because I think that comics have just become, how do you say it?
Stupid.
They're just events. They just try to make like these big, like they try to get headlines like, oh, we have Bendis. Oh, Batman's going to show his dong, in this comic book. Oh,
Mhm.
Batman and Catwoman are getting married. Psych, they're not. You know what? Like all this craziness, and it seems like all they're trying to do is get some kind of mainstream headlines or some kind of, ooh, look what we're doing. We got Bendis from Marvel. Woohoo! Like, who cares? You got Bendis, and I'm sorry, Michael. Like, he's a great guy. He stood by me at Marvel, things like that. I have nothing against him, and I think he can do great work, but I just don't think he deserved the hoopla that he got, especially when somebody like Pete Tomasi, I believe, paid his dues over at DC way more and was way he was way more worthy of, you know what I mean, those titles like Superman and those big
Sure.
titles.
What
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me is like they're they push down the concept of having like rock stars, yet they play off of it when it suits them.
Of course.
Um, so I don't know.
Yeah, they wouldn't have treated Pete Tomasi, you know, like they did or they do if he was on Bendis level.
That's true. Yeah. Now, I've only got 5 minutes left myself. Of course, you guys can go as long as you'd like. But I do want to put forward a little theory and get you guys chomping on it, because next week we're going to be starting a series, which I'm sure that Art will tell you about. But my theory is this: I think all of this nonsense, we're talking about old and new. We're talking about the loss of fun, and there's good things too with production value, digital coloring, as Todd had said, and these absolutely stunning books we can get these days. But I think this whole fall that we've come into is started in the Iron Age, and I'm wondering if Chris Claremont isn't to blame.
Can you elaborate?
Well, I mean, Chris is the one who came in and saved Marvel. We all know this with his X-Men run, and it was wonderful. We all love it. It's legendary. I mean, it's what people know as the X-Men. Those of us who are a bit older, our X-Men were very different, right? And
Yeah.
then we had this big change, but it was a good change. I loved it, actually. But what he did was he started this darker, angstier type of storytelling, this darker thing, and it led into the Iron Age of comic books. Of course, is the late '80s and '90s of the Iron Age, right? And just very dark and very brooding, which is, of course, when you have that kind of feeling, there's less fun, right? And of course, it led us in. Well, I'm not going to get into all the financials of what happened with the bust and all those other kind of things, and I'm sure they played their part. But it's brought us to this extremely, I wouldn't use the word sarcastic. I think the word I'd use is
Cynical.
cynical. Yeah, there you go. The cynical state we have today, where everything's wrong, and then you have all these people who are just simply. They're just so full of themselves and their virtue but I really think it's coming out of what the changes that Chris Claremont and other people like him put in the late 80s. And I'm just curious if you guys think that is true.
100%.
What do you think, Todd?
Well, I guess there is a point to that, right? Because I was a huge Daredevil fan, and Daredevil when it got good, it got a little, grayer, right? Because you
Yeah.
say basically your heroes are a little grayer. They're not as black and white as they were. When you add in all these this darkness to them, and they're brooding and stuff. So Yeah, prior to Roger McKenzie, I don't remember it being that way, but after him, it certainly got that way in other comics. But there were certainly comics that didn't have that, right? Like we talked about Walt Simonson writing Thor.
Sure.
Thor wasn't brooding at all, and but of course he's a godlike figure, so
Yeah. Well, I'm
you know,
looking for the Inception, Todd.
right? Yeah, I guess there was a mixture of that because even Byrne started writing like that. You
Yeah.
know, Alpha Flight had a lot of that. There was so many problems over in Alpha Flight. It's like they never really got to fight anybody. There was always these internal problems. What
Right.
was the
That's
first
true.
one? The Snowbird was the first. Oh no, it was the Mantis, the Aqua girl there that they had, the green girl. And then it went to Snowbird, and then of course Shaman had some kind of issue. So Alpha Flight never. I don't even remember anybody they really fought, but there was always some kind of internal problem. So I guess you're right.
Well, Chester, there was also Denny O'Neil. So I
Mhm.
think Denny O'Neil helped with some of that more, I guess, reality-based storylines, where they were maybe a little bit more socially conscious,
Yeah.
and perhaps taking a more cynical view of the world, less of a black and white, pardon the pun, take on heroes. And
Mhm.
and I think there are gray area characters, and they can live in that world. I think Wolverine and Daredevil and some of these characters, yeah, and Punisher
Mhm.
are more of those types. Even to some extent, uh, Batman. Although if Batman didn't have the morality, like the hardcore morality he has, he could definitely be more into that gray area world. So I think that's interesting that you can have those type of different characters. So you some of that cynicism and some of those ideas can come out in character, but I don't think that they should necessarily, they don't always have to come out in form of story or
Mhm.
as like social consciousness, that we have to hold up a mirror to reality all the time. Sometimes these can just be good, straightforward action adventure stories.
Mhm.
And I
Well,
think that's what's missing.
I definitely need to jump myself. Like I said, you guys keep going. But just I wanted to set it up for next week's topic because I would say for that age, there's no one more influential than Chris Claremont.
Yes, you
Yeah.
you have that hit the nail right on the head. So thank you so much, Chester, for coming in and pontificating with us. And we're
Yes.
going to miss you, but we'll try to carry on without you.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Love you all. We'll see you next week. Bye.
All right, brother.
Bye.
The memory I have of Claremont was something of always leaving these threads, these smaller subplot threads dangling.
Sometimes
Constant,
they would never come back around.
right? Right? Like
Yeah.
who was the traitor within the X-Men? Wasn't there some kind of traitor storyline that never really got culminated?
I don't
Like a
remember.
Judas, there was a Judas within kind of storyline, and everyone speculated it was Gambit, I think, and I don't think they ever got to an end of that. And he's supposedly coming back. He's supposed to be coming back to mainstream comics, from what I'm hearing. Did I
Yeah.
lose?
Yes, definitely. What I wanted to talk about a little bit as well is just production value in comics and maybe just how the physical comic itself has changed over the years, and just maybe a little bit of behind the scenes stuff with how the comics actually happen. So I know you guys are a lot younger than I am, but I was talking to Chester off air, and we were talking that I predate Federal Express. So
Right.
when I broke in '82, um, we would use the post office. So everything was sent in 8-page increments to the publishers in New York City, and then we got Federal Express, and so we could actually get things done quicker and get them to um, the the comic publishers quicker, and then then it became internet. And so then you could scan, and then you could send, basically as soon as you finish the page, you could get that into the publisher's hands. And I think what also happened with all these changes is that things had to be thought through more in advance and in a more clear fashion, meaning that you had to have three books done before that first book hit. So everything was done in 3-month increments. So the solicitations for that issue that would come out, it would, or the solicitations for that book, that book then would come out 3 months later. It's still done the same way, but because of these newfound technologies, what's happening is all these decisions and all of this stuff is happening last minute, because they know they can go right up to the last minute, meaning like before you had to plan things. So 8-page increments, you had to get things done in advance. You had to figure out, where things were going to be down the line. You couldn't fly by the seat of your pants as much. So as far as story, art, all those things. So then, Federal Express, you have next day delivery, things like that. So expectations changed and production schedules changed. So when I was working on X-Men in the 90s with Jim Lee and Will Spertasio, those books were going up to a week before shipping. So meaning we would get that book done a week before it would ship. Most of the DC books, just before I left DC, they were all on a similar schedule. So all these decisions and all this stuff is happening last minute, meaning that most of these people don't have time to really figure out plot lines or things that aren't working, because there just isn't any time. Because the book gets done a week later, it hits the stands. So I wanted to throw that in there as well. One of the big significant changes. And do you guys feel like it's better to perhaps be able to think on a book for 3 months? Like you get it done, but then it's in the drawer, for 3 months, and then you can make, not that you're going to go back on it and make a bunch of corrections, but there's a little bit more lead time. There's a little bit of a more relaxed work environment versus like getting it done a week before it has to ship. So Zach, how do you feel about that?
No, yeah, I believe in taking time. Like with anything I do, there's always like I don't post things usually, especially that have like my comic and whatnot, where like I've not given it at least a week, where I've put it down, not looked at it for a week, and then come back to it just to make sure I'm still happy with it. Just because your brain, the way your brain works in growing accustomed to looking at something, sometimes the longer you look at it, the fewer mistakes your brain catches. So you have to. I agree with like taking a break and letting it kind of pickle in a way, and and then seeing if you're happy with it, because I would guarantee the quality would be better. And a lot of these published books, especially from major publishers, if they would take the time to give it the true love that it deserves, even if it costs them. And it's I think, it all comes down to that, whole entire, you got to make the money. We got to have a product now. We got to do it now. Everything is in now, right now.
Yeah. I have a theory about that. Yeah, you brought up a good point. I have a theory about that. I think the reason that DC and Marvel are on these crazy publishing schedules is because it's cheaper. Because then they don't have to invest money 3 months in advance. You know what I mean? They don't have 3 issues worth of investment sitting in a drawer. They only have like that one book that they invest money in, and then they get that money back that month. So it's
they don't trust people anymore either, Art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What happened to, I'm going to invest in this comic artist. I'm going to give him basically 3 months of pay for his life to make this thing for me. And I'm going to trust them to do their job because they want to do their job. and in 3 months I'll get my investment back. There's no trust in that anymore. It's like they need that instant investment because they don't trust. Like, look how quickly they interchange people.
Yeah, and even movies are done this
Mhm.
way too. Like when they talk about, okay, we're going to do the next Star Wars movie, it's already mandated a release date. Like when they conceive of it, they already have a release date because it's all based on numbers. It's all based on the shareholders and making X amount of money each quarter. So they're slaves to these shareholders. And I don't know this for fact, but with comics, I believe it's the same thing, that they need to show X amount of revenue every quarter. And if they have 3 months of investment, you know what I mean? They're not going to be showing the same amount of profits as if they, do these one, get the book done. A week later, it comes out. They recoup all their funds, and then they keep doing books that way. But just from a personal standpoint, it takes all the damn fun out of doing a comic book, because I just say this and it's pretty brash, but it's like working with a gun to your head. So deadlines are always like there's a gun to your head. You always have to perform in a certain amount of time. And I've been doing this for 35 years. I understand that. But the new modern way of doing comic books, it's like a nuke, or you're sitting on, like TNT instead of just a gun to your head. It's so crazy, and there isn't any leeway for any mistakes. And possibly this is also why you don't see long runs on books either. Maybe one reason is because you're going to burn people out a lot quicker than you would have before, based on that crazy expectation.
Well, you just came from they started a model just before you left that must be a little bit different than what we're talking about, because they went to a 2-month 2-in-a-month book system, which if you notice, like for instance Justice League, right, it started off with Jimmy Chung and he drew about 3 issues, and then went to Jorge Jimenez and he drew about 4 issues, right? And then so he didn't do that. They must have had some in the can for that to happen organically like that. Because he's not a fast artist by any means, so he probably can only do a book a month. But for his 3 or 4 issues to come out in the span of 3 or 4 issues would be in the span of 2 months. So you get 4 issues done by one artist in 2 months. He must have been ahead. He must have had his scripts ahead of time and got his done, and then it went to someone else for a couple months. And then it alternated back. It's like a weird thing that they started doing just as you were leaving. Like, how are they doing it now?
Well, that would have been nice. I would have liked working with that schedule, but I think probably what they did is they had some downtime and they actually got a jump, but it crashed and burned after 4 issues. So, they got 4 issues out of the one artist, and then they had to, have the other artist come in. And probably what they did is they had both artists at some point working simultaneous on the book to try to get ahead. And sometimes they'll do that, but more often than not, I've noticed that even when they're trying to get ahead, they don't get ahead because the planning just doesn't work. They don't get it together quick enough. So it still becomes just a Band-Aid solution versus any long-term solution. They really need to get the sanity back and maybe bring some of the fun back into comics, so it's not as much of an assembly line and a burnout factor for these artists. Is if possibly they mandate that 3-month, where they have to have 3 issue lead time. And one of the problems I've noticed is that in the past, if a writer couldn't keep up with the schedule, they would have a fill-in writer as well. You don't see that happening as much anymore. And there have been times, I'm not even kidding you guys in the chat, and Zach and Todd, like, this is absolutely insane, where we, the artists, would be waiting for a script. How the hell does this happen? You know what I mean? Like, that is that's beyond my comprehension. Because I don't know, get somebody to write a script. How hard can it be? Why are we waiting for that one guy? And then that one guy that's writing 4 books, oh, he gets to write 4 books. I only get to draw 1 book or ink 1 book. You know what I mean? Because it's so much longer. Why are we waiting for that guy so he can double, triple, and quadruple dip? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not cool.
You mentioned something that people may not realize. When you talk about fill-in issues, those were always things that were done and in the editor's drawer, waiting for that problematic time when someone was going to miss something, and then boom, then you'd get the fill-in issue. You know what I mean? And that would be part, but that still needed a lead time so that you could announce that this was happening. You still had the 3 months to go, okay, we got to put it into the previews. It's not going to be the regular team. It's going to be this fill-in issue. That was all part of it. So, but
you can tell when the wheels start coming off, though, Todd.
Oh,
you
yeah.
can tell, as you're doing this monthly, you can tell when somebody's dropping the ball a little bit. So they can schedule those in, and they can get those in easy enough. And like you said, if it's already in the drawer, it's just a matter of plugging it into the previews catalog.
Right.
And the thing, what was always cool about those one and dones, those inventory stories,
Right.
I'm not kidding you guys. When I'd go to Marvel and DC, there could be an Art Adams inventory story on Detective Comics. You know what I mean? Like it's sometimes, because there's a lot of lead time, they get like some really cool artists to do these fill-in issues. So I don't know when fill-in issues became like a negative, because I think it could be a positive, because you can give like A-list artists that are a little slower, you can give them lead time to do the work of their careers. And you can get writers that are slower, or writers that you can woo that, may not want to do monthly comics, to do a one and done. And just food for thought, they also used to give some of these inventory stories. They would take a chance on somebody like Zach. They would give Zach an inventory story, give him 6 weeks, 7 weeks, because they know, he's a newer guy, and they would take a chance on those guys, and they would give them a little bit more lead time, and they would groom them. And then at the end, they have a great story, that they have inventoried, and they worked with a new guy, and they groomed him without a ton of pressure, without giving him a monthly commitment, and without a ton of pressure on him. And it's just like music and anything else now. They expect you to step into these roles and be 100%. You know what I mean? Like you need to know your craft to the nth degree. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're not going to survive.
Do you know the story behind The Boy Who Knew Spider-Man?
No.
That issue, that was one of those inventory issues that they had to use, and it won all kinds of awards that year. All kinds of awards. And it was an inventory issue. It was a beautiful story about a boy who's was being abused by his father, and Spider-Man kind of steps in and stuff. But man, really well told story. But it was one of those that sat in a drawer for a while before it got used.
Yeah. Well, you know what else they used to do? They used to do annuals.
Right.
So they would get, like, Art Adams would always do an X-Men annual every year. So you would get these guys to work, I don't know, a double-sized 38-page or 48-page book, and you'd give them 6 months to do it, and then you have this killer annual at the end of the year. So then you can double ship. You ship your normal monthly book, and then you ship your annual. So then you get 2 books of that title that come out for that year, that month. So instead of 12 books that year, you have 13 books. And the annual always, is, God, what were they at the time? 10 cents more or 20 cents more because it was a 38-page story. I think later it became like $1 for an extra 10 pages or so. You got, you'd pay an extra $1 for. So I don't know. I always thought that those scenarios were win-win for not only the creators or the creatives, but also the fan base.
Yeah, I agree. Because you're right, Art Adams did a lot of those. He would actually in 1 year do across all 3 X books. Back then when there was only 3. It was X Factor, X-Men, and Uncanny, and he would do an annual for each one.
Yeah. So you could get an A-list guy like actually A-list isn't even a good qualification. Like he's A plus, level artist to do 3 books a year, because that guy doesn't work well under pressure. So
Right.
he could do the work of a lifetime, do 3 books, annuals a year, and make a good living for himself, because also the residuals or the royalties on those books were pretty good. And then he would get to sell the artwork. So most of the time, Art Adams would live just off the sale of the artwork alone in the day. So, it's a win-win for that guy.
Right.
But they don't do stuff as much like that anymore. You guys want to talk about possibly the quality of the printing, the difference between, I guess 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and now?
We can, because what ties into that is coloring. You can't put this kind of digital coloring on newsprint and get the same effect where it has that realistic quality in those what we'd call effects and burns and screen layer stuff that they do so well. It won't look the same. It just won't.
Okay, well, let's and maybe people in the chat can chime in. Hey, we got Ray Thulu here. I said your name right that time. Yeah. Okay, so if they went with a newsprint, because I know Alterna's doing this,
Mhm.
if they went with a high quality newsprint, and that maybe they could bring some of the printing costs down, and in turn they would bring the consumer costs down.
Right.
So do you think that they should do one or the other, or do you think that maybe DC should have maybe some like newsprint versions that they could lower the price and maybe aim them more at children, since the children aren't going to really know the difference in quality? You know what I mean? And then have like your more prestige books that are higher quality.
I think there's room for that. I think there's definitely room for that. I'd rather, you're right. There is a better quality newsprint than what we had in our 80s and 70s, and the effects don't look as bad. I mean, because you can obviously tell the difference between the digital and then the newsprint look, and the effects still can be red and stuff like that. They don't get lost that bad. So I'm all for it. If you want to bring the price, the only way to, like, we can't sit here and save comics, right? Art, we just can't do it. But the only way to do it is to lower the price, to make it, you're not going to put it in a convenience stand no matter how. DC and Marvel, even if they could, you're not going to put that in a convenience stand, because nobody's mother is going to buy their kid a $5 book.
Exactly.
It's when it was 60 cents and 70 cents, and if it was $1.99, they go, "Dollar, you want a book for $1.99? That's not bad. I'll do that."
Mhm.
But
Well, I always thought like when I was a kid, way, 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 way back when, most of the time a comic book would rival a candy bar as far as cost.
right,
So candy bars are still relatively cheap even with inflation, but comic books are not even in line with the cost of a candy bar anymore.
right,
Like how could they have done it then and they can't now? The difference is they used to move product back then. So they had better distribution, they had newsstand, they had more shops, they had more places that, I guess, more availability is a better way of putting it, and a lower cover price. And I think if the mainstreams are going to succeed, they have to figure out those two things. Do you guys agree?
absolutely,
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely. It just doesn't compare to the kind of entertainment kids can get.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Fortnite. How do they?
yeah, it's in their wheelhouse too, because if they got also, if you hit a printer up like you're a week from printing, you're going to be paying that printer more for that stress printing and speed printing and even shipping and all that other stuff than you would if you had those things done 3 months in advance, or you had those done quicker. That might be a way of bringing the cost down, and also just figuring out a way to keep the quality up, but bring the cost of doing it down. So like you said, Todd, there is a lot of newsprint that you wouldn't even know is newsprint. So you could make like your main publishing line a cheaper printed book, for the masses. So get the wide distribution up, get your newsstands back, all those things, and then have your higher end stuff for maybe your more adult clientele, the people that are going to respect the quality and they're going to understand the differences between the newsprint and the others and would be willing to pay a premium, which gets me, and Zach can probably chime in here, which we go into possibly, the more, boutique books like what Zach's doing with his and that I've done with Black and White. And Todd, you have your book with Graveyard Shift, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we've all done it. So then there's the boutique, high end books. Like we're doing books on a quality level and with a unique way of marketing and selling these books that DC and Marvel, can't touch. How do you feel about that?
I'd be a little afraid, though, Art, that if they went and said, okay, we're going to lower the cost of books, but that means we have to lower the cost of what you get paid per page. And already they've driven, compared to the Neil Adams era when he got everybody into sort of the $300 and $400 range, by pushing the sort of pushing his agenda onto the publishers, that they have gone down. They have gone down in years and not gone up. So imagine if they go, you know what, we need to do this to salvage what we got, to save comics. We're going to lower the price. But guess what, guys? We're lowering your pay. And you remember the last cut, when Marvel was bought by DC, they cut, what was it, 20%?
Well, I don't know. I mean, they would also have to sell more, because like the idea of lowering wouldn't be just to make more money for Marvel or DC. It would also be to pass that savings on to the reader, and by lowering the cost, hopefully they can sell more per unit. And also they would have to go hand in hand with the distribution. They have to increase the distribution.
Well, also, even if the page prices started going down, those artists, with this proven method of this indie revival, essentially, these artists don't have to stay, with DC or Marvel. They can go and do their own thing, So it's just like if DC and Marvel decide like, oh no, we're not making as much and we're not gonna pay you as much, then all those people can just literally be like, well, we leave, we're gonna go do our own thing.
But think about what you're doing, Zach, and what I'm doing. We're the artists, but what else are we doing? How many other hats you wearing? You tell that to a DC guy who's doing a monthly book, getting his monthly rate per page, and he's gonna go try to do this. It's a tough. You become the machine. It's easier to work when the machine is behind you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, it's like if I can do it, I you know what I mean? Like if I can do it, like I look at it this way, like if I can go out and do this sort of thing, an industry professional that has a name, that has already published things, that probably has a small fan base, and I'm starting basically with nothing. Like I literally didn't even become anybody until I started coming on to these shows with you guys. Yeah, until but and thinking of like an industry professional that's already been in it, like art and stuff like that, and then they leave. Their name carries weight. People know that. So it's like their marketing and everything doesn't have to be as stressful as me, where I'm like I've literally been in the grindstone every single day doing all this stuff because no one knows who the heck I am.
Right.
And also, Todd, if they don't hire really good talent and they start paying people less or using less talent, which some of the publishers are doing, especially Marvel, then your sales are going to go down as well, because it's going to reflect in poor sales. So the book is going to look less than it could, and I think consumers are going to realize that. So I'm not sure if it would work out exactly like you're saying, Todd, but I think it would probably be a little bit of everything that we're saying that they would do. But
you would hope it wouldn't be, right? You would hope that if they decided we can probably sell more if we go a little cheaper, that they wouldn't take anything away from the page rate. But like you said, they do go after lesser talent. When like in your heyday, when you saw Michael Allred, right, and you're like, wow, this is refreshing to see somebody who's so simplistic, kind of a less is more style. But now that everybody kind of draws like Michael Allred, it's not as refreshing, right? It almost comes across like, oh, cheap. It doesn't ring well. But so I wonder, like, I don't know the page rates of everybody. Tier A, Tier B, Tier C. I've heard them and I kind of have an idea, but man, I would hate to see page rates keep going down, because they did when Marvel sold when Disney bought. It was either 18% or 20% across the board with their page rates.
Well, you know what? I was going to, and we should try to start wrapping this up, and I'm going to get into our topic for the next 2 weeks, but I was going to get into a venture with a money person, and they were into MMA. So they wanted to invest into a comic book publishing company. It turns out it was just a bunch of vanity press for those guys. But what happened is the money person that they hired, she was awesome, and she's still a friend of mine. She, when Disney bought Marvel, they had, because it was trading stock and things, they have to make that stuff public, all their finances and the deal they have to make public. So you have to pay money for the documents, but they do. And so she bought the documents, and to help answer your question, Todd, this is fact, that in those documents it said that Marvel was going to cut rates by a certain percentage so that they could pay for the new divisions, which is the film divisions, things like that. So they could grow in those ways. So they were already in that contract. And this was 10 years ago or so, that they had already set up that they were going to start cutting page rates, and that they were probably going to only be able to afford a certain level of artists. And so, as time goes, you start seeing they start reaping I guess they're reaping the rewards of it as far as saving money, and then the consumer is paying the price with less quality as far as the art in the books. So you're onto something there, and I just said that just so I could validate your point of view, because I do believe that is happening. I think it is fact. But I want to say this, because we're kind of getting into a territory for the next couple episodes. So one of the things we were talking about off air, people in the chat, is a 2-part show where we would discuss, we would pontificate the fall of comics. So, kind of how we got to this point in time, and then the new rise of comics, which is kind of what you're seeing, the phenomenon with YouTube and Indiegogo and Kickstarter. So, we can get into more of this next week, and then wrap it up with possibly a nice positive spin on we can pontificate on where things are going, where things are headed, and maybe try to put a good bright spin on all this doom and gloom. So does that sound good?
Yeah. Absolutely.
How about you guys in the chat? Does that sound like a good topic? Are we on par? So, do you guys have a parting shot? You guys want to promote?
Well, I have a question. Are we also going to try to come up with some more solutions when you talk about the fall of comics? Are we going to try to present the solutions at the same time?
No. It'll be two-part. Yeah, so we can kind of stay focused. So the one, the hour would be the fall of comics. No solution.
Right.
Basically, we're just kind of giving everybody the beat down. It's going to be like, all kinds of conspiracy theories. All the negativity, all the bad things, and then we can. Then the next stream we can talk about possibly ways of solving things, and then the high points and good stuff that is happening right now, things that we see that are possibly moving in the right direction. So I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ray Thulu, he gives us a thumbs up on the topic. Yeah. I'm trying to multitask and failing miserably. Welcome to the club, Comic Book Bob. So yeah, if you guys want to see more of this content, let us know. Support the channel, get the word out there, and if you can, everybody listening, just like this, it'll help the algorithms. So, Zach, do you have a parting shot?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. You can find me at Twitter at Zach_DB. And I currently have a project on Indiegogo called World of Golma. And it's only got 4 more days. So go check it out. It's action adventure with some, I think I called it whimsy. Yeah, there we go. Whimsy. So, yeah, go and check it out.
I'm a big fan of whimsy.
Yeah, whimsy's always fun. And I'm really excited to get going on it in full production mode. So,
as far as what I have to promote, obviously Graveyard Shift came to an end. It did very, very well. Very proud of that whole campaign. I was only a small part of it. I only did 20 pages, but it was still really cool to be a part of that. I don't know why we didn't get on one whole episode and have everyone that took part in it be part of a live stream, but that didn't happen. But anyway, that was a cool thing for me. And Ignition is sort of gearing up and getting back into production. And I'm not sure about Florida Man. Florida Man, I got to do a new cover because the Florida Man cover was used for Mike's novel. So I'll have to do another thing. I won't give that away, but you'll see it pretty soon. But I'm not sure what's going on with that. Somebody just announced that they bought Cautionary Comics. His name is James Dean Anderson. And so we'll see what's going on. I know Mike has some involvement. I know it's editor-in-chief. So I don't know the specifics, but I do know they asked me to do a new cover.
Oh, cool. Hey, was it you that drew the cover of that that guy on top of the alligator?
Yeah, that was me. Yeah.
Is that you?
Yeah.
That thing's iconic, man. I saw that everywhere.
Yeah.
That was nice art. Is this what is this link here, Todd, that you put in?
That's my Ignition Get Tuned In channel.
Okay. Yeah, you guys go check out Todd's YouTube channel.
Everyone here knows where they can find me as far as I use my name. Ignition is just sort of the character, but Twitter and all that stuff is just Todd Maroney, and most people know that. Okay.
Yeah, and you guys definitely check out Zach's book. He's got
Golma.
World of Golma. How many days? You said 4 days left?
Yeah, I got 4 days left.
Yeah, get on it, man. Are you going to go in this shop, or is it too early?
It's probably too early.
You haven't got that far yet?
Yeah, no, I haven't. There's a lot of things up in the air right now.
Well, hold on, Zach. You tweak some of the pages. You want to share some of the tweaks and stuff like that?
Yeah, you know what? If you can share, why don't you share with the stream here?
Give him the whole screen art. He can share some of the awesome art that he's done for it.
All right. So do I just click on him and then that's the whole screen?
Well, he'll have to. He'll have to get what he's gonna. He'll have to hit the share screen button in the.
Hold on, just give me 1.
You guys walk me through it because I would love to show off his art. I voted for you, Zach, in the Drawn and Quartered the other night. I thought that piece was really nice.
Oh, thank you. And let me share this and share that. There we go.
You'll see it in the back room once he shares that.
Oh, okay. So then I just click on it. I got it. Okay.
Yep.
So there we go.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. A World of Golema. Let's see. It's a post-apocalyptic, fun fantasy-filled world of a lot of what ifs. And we follow this guy named Era as he goes through this kind of redemption story, trying to figure out what he can do to redeem some really terrible mistakes he's made. And it's a very stylized, painterly sort of feel for the book. And yeah, if you're interested in backing a very different style of book, because I come from a background of concept art and game art, so that definitely like kind of shows. And it was fun that people were pointing that out to me. They were like, "Did you do video games before this?" I was like, "Yeah," and they're like, that's why." So
Yeah, I was gonna say it looks a little like concept art, like development stuff. Yeah, I like it.
yeah, no, it's so it was one of those things where it's like I love doing lots of art. I want to tell stories, and so I took the skills that I knew and used them.
Is it sorcery? Is it kind of fantasy oriented, or is it?
It's fantasy. I would say it's like technologically fantasy. Because there's a lot of it's kind of like I would say kind of Star Wars where we don't explain the Force, but it exists. I'm not going to talk about the prequels, or
you start bringing in metachlorians, Zach, and I'm out.
No, I am out of no. I'm not a part of that. I was not happy about that. I loved the idea of the mystical power and this kind of bigger belief. So it has elements of that in it, where as far as fantasy goes, but it is based in a post-apocalyptic world where there's been a civilization that was there, and these people are using the remnants of that to build their own places, and that's why there's like this. See if I can. Yeah.
Well, it looks great. I love that establishing shot. The top left, it looks amazing. Those colors are brilliant.
Thank you.
Pretty good at those long shots. Use them as much as you can. Those are awesome.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of establishing sort of scenery just because I want to bring people into my world, and
exactly
that's
what they're used for. That's really, really smart to say it that way, because establishing shots bring you in, immerse you in where the location is, what it looks like, the beauty of it, the desolation of it. It's really what helps you get there.
Especially when they're done this well. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Farmer Dan's got this. I got to share it. I'm glad that the name is catching on, man. Yeah, that was tough coming up with that. That was Chester's idea. The Pontificators. All right. Yeah. So it's very good. So if you guys like what you see, go check out Zach's site and back his book. He's only got 4 more days, and it looks pretty amazing. How many pages is it?
Right now it's sitting at 110 with the current thumbed. Yeah, currently thumbed, but and that's not including all the. I have 7 years of sketches and things, ideas and stuff that have been put into this. So it's there's also a culmination of, like, I would say maybe like 10 pages of just concept art and stuff to kind of show the ideas and everything that's being brought. That's like, so I'd say 120 pages if you put it that way. So
you said 7 years, not 70 years, right?
No, not 70 years. I am super old. No.
Where are you at on the tally? How's the book doing right now?
Right now, 30 pages done.
No. I mean, as far as what do you need to hit your goal?
Oh, my goal is at 2K, but and I'm doing actually comparatively to last week. I jumped quite a bit. So I'm at 32%.
If you guys look, I want to speak for Zach a little bit. If you guys have seen him on Drawn and Quartered and that kind of stuff, you know how good Zach is. And he's actually, these pages, they're just the tip of the iceberg, because every time he does something, it just gets better and better. And I believe his storytelling is getting better and better.
Mhm.
So I hope you guys back it. Let's get some help for Zach, because I'd like to see this book make it.
And
Well-
how much is the book?
Right now, I have the book signed edition for $20.
Okay, so you're getting 100 pages, 100+ pages, fully painted artwork for $20, man. That's a deal, man. And you get a signature. That's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh, and right now, because I was excited and I did a bunch of I think they are all 3x4. No, they're actually bigger. They're bigger than 3x4. They're about 3.5 by 5 inches. I did a bunch of sketch cards, and so everybody gets one of those too. So that's just
nice.
a fun little thing that's going to be put in with all of the peoples that have already bought them, and anybody that buys a physical copy gets one. So at this point, just because I got excited and I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to get all these done before the campaign's over, so I don't have to worry about it later.
What if you don't hit your flexible goal?
If I don't hit the 2,000, they just take a little bit of a larger cut of whatever I have done. So that'll be fine. It just means I order less books.
Okay.
And the thing is, though, is I have a savings that I've been building that I'm going to use my own personal funds to buy as many books as I personally want. But this mostly was like a hey, I have an idea. Let's see if other people are interested in my idea. And because I kind of went into this knowing that I wasn't going to make a lot of money because I'm a new face. I haven't earned the respect or the privilege of people knowing if I can actually do the work. So, and that's like the biggest problem people are having with independent comics right now is and this should have been part of the topic, is like, the accountability of independent creators versus like, that the DC and Marvel are going to come out with books. You're not worried about that, but that's the risk you take with independents, is if they even make the books.
Well, this will be a topic for another that we can pontificate on a later day. But the thing is, I understand what you're saying, Zach, because as a creative person, sometimes these things just burn. They just burn. You can't even reason with the burning inside. Like, you just have to tell this story. You just have to do this. This comic book. And so, with Black and White and with Chrono Mechanics, it was the same way. So a lot of times it does come at a bit of a financial hardship, but you can't not do it. You have to put the book out, because if you don't, it's like part of your soul dies. You know what I mean?
Well, it was like, it was kind of a strange thing, is I got in this perfect position where my wife got this amazing job, and she was pretty much just like, that thing you've been working on for 7 years, just do it. Just do it. I've got us. Just do it. And wow. So I was like, I was just in this crazy cool position to do that. And I was just like, yes, I'm going to do it. So it literally was just like,
Zach, will you guys adopt Todd and I? We would love to be able to finance our projects.
I'm sorry.
Come on.
We have one daughter, and we're not looking to adopt yet, because we actually want to have another kid before we start adopting. So 2 kids, and then we'll start adopting. So come back to us in like 2 years, and we'll see. We'll see.
In the meantime, Zach, Todd and I can babysit.
There you go.
Todd
actually could work out for you.
I was like, I don't do well with kids.
I love kids.
All right, man. Yeah, so that's very good. You guys check it out. Any backers will definitely help out Zach. He's going to do this regardless, but the more he can get, the better, and the less he has to take from his wife.
Well, no, it's not even from her. It's just like, commission work and stuff that I've done. So it's just like, I had this kind of planned out golden goose egg opportunity to do the passion project.
Hey Zach, I understand.
So,
I was
so just it
I was
just
just
jumped
throwing
on
I
it.
was just flinging some poo your way, man, because I'm a bit jealous. So anyway, so we have that. Todd's got his YouTube channel. Check that out. How do I get back to where we were? Does Zach have to stop sharing for us to go back? Do we know how to do this?
No, there we go.
That's not it. There we go.
There we go.
All right, man. So yeah, we're gonna wrap this up. Farmer Dan, what do you say? Sorry, I joined late. Is this a good entry book, or is there something I should have read before? So this is to you, Zach. I'm gonna put this up. Wait, that's not it. So Farmer Dan says, sorry, I joined late. Is this a good entry book, or is there something I should read before? So is this a one and done? Is this the first in the line of books, or what is this, Zach?
Yeah, this is the beginning. This is the introduction book. Because there's a lot more. It'll take me a whole stream to explain everything. But yes, this is the introductory book. This will explain the world. This will explain everything that's going on. And it took a long time to try and figure out where to start with the story. So I'm just excited to be able to work on it.
Okay. Just this will make you feel good, Zach. Read Albino Thunder Buns chat here.
After I finish paying bills tonight, if there's money left over, I'll back Zach's book. Oh, thank you, Albino Thunderbuns. An awesome name, by the way.
Yeah, my wife loves the Thunder Buns.
Them Thunderbuns.
So very good, man. Hey, this was a lot of fun, Zach, Todd, and thanks to Chester for coming in at the top of the hour. And we're going to try to do this as a regular weekly show every Friday, and we're going to pontificate on different subjects. So next week is part 1 of a 2-part series that we will be doing, and the first part will be the fall of comics. So we are going to give you a lot of insight, and we were going to pontificate on all the problems that we see in the industry. And then the following week, we will shed a ton of bright light and some brilliant observations on how things are getting better and possibly where we can take it from there. So thanks again to all. Thanks to everybody in the chat. It's been a blast. You guys are the best. And have a good night, guys.
Good night,
care.
everybody.